What's going on, everyone? In this video, we'll be going over 16 setups I see potential in for this upcoming week. The first two we'll go over are going to be SPY and QQQ, just to give you my overall thoughts on the market and show you my technical analysis on those two. Then we'll dive into some setups that have earnings reports this upcoming week, as well as Microsoft and Facebook, due to the fact that those are market movers and they are setting up quite well. So with that being said, we'll just jump right into SPY. So as you can see, this is the daily time frame, and we did just bounce off the 50 SMA on Thursday and closed quite well on Friday, regaining the 20 SMA and testing this 418 resistance area. So for this upcoming week, I'd like to see if we can actually get a good sense of direction and break out of this 418 area, break out of the 422 resistance area, and potentially push to the 425 to 430 area. We have been range trading on this one for quite a while, since the start of April. So for around a month, we have not really had that much sense of direction. So I'd really like to see if we can actually either push to the upside or, undercut this low of 402.70 and then break this downtrending, or I should say uptrending support line, and then potentially test 388 to 394. And then after that point, we do have some nice volume shelves around there. But overall, I'm just looking for a good sense of direction on SPY and QQQ. As you can see with QQQ, same deal here. We have not really seen much direction. Honestly, since the beginning of December, we've been trading between 330 or 300 up to 342 or so. Currently, we're around 327. We did just regain that 50 SMA. I'd like to see if we can actually regain this uptrending support line, and if we can actually regain 330 and 334. After that point, we would regain the 20 SMA, and I'd be looking to see if we could take out 338 and 342 and push for new highs, potentially to 345 to 350. But if we actually do reject these levels right here, then I'd be looking to see if we can undercut this low of 315 and potentially come back down to around this 310 or 302 area. And then after that, we do have this low of 297.55, which I'd be looking to see if we could undercut that. Overall, I'm just looking for a good sense of direction on the overall markets, as we have been rather indecisive and range bound for the last month or so. Now, the first one that we're going to go over is going to be Macy's. They do reports Tuesday in pre-market. If we zoom out real quick. Yeah, so they report Tuesday in pre-market. This one's looking very interesting. They are testing this downtrending resistance right here. If we get a good break of this, I'd like to see if we could break 1860 and potentially push to this $20 mark right here. We do have a recent high of 21.10 and then a 52-week high of around 22.29. So I'd be looking to see if we could break these levels and potentially push to around 20 to 22 to take out some of these levels to the upside. Now, if we do reject this downtrending resistance, I'd like to see if we could come back down and test 1730, potentially come back down to 16, and then we do have a nice level around 15 or so. And we do have a good amount of volume around here. So if we do start to retest some of these levels, we could see that this level holds up quite well, as we do have a lot of volume being held here. All right, so the next one that we'll go over is going to be SE. They report Tuesday in pre-market as well. This one is a bit of a growth stock, and as you all probably know, growth has not been performing too well for the past couple of months. As you can see, we did just bounce off of this uptrending support line. I'd like to see if we actually do get a continuation off of this bounce and potentially break 218 and then push 228. And then we do have a nice resistance around 240 or so. After that, we do have our 20 and 50 SMAs around that level. And then we do have a nice resistance around 257 as well. Overall, I'm just looking to see if we can get a good sense of direction on this one with the upcoming earnings report. But if we do actually break down, I'd be looking to see a strong break of this 205 to 206 area, a strong break of this uptrending support line, and then see if we could retest this 195 area. We also do have a level around 188 where this low is from March 25th. So this 188 low, after that, I'd be looking to see if we could test around 170 where we do have a nice volume shelf. Just to note, we do have a volume gap between 190 all the way down to 170. So if we do get an undercutting of this 188 low, then we could potentially flush down to 170. Now the next one that we'll go over is going to be Walmart. For this one, this has been weak. However, we did just test the downtrend resistance that we're in. If we zoom out a little bit, you can see that we've been in this pinch point for quite a while. We are, testing the 20 SMA. I'd like to see if we can get a good sense of direction from this upcoming earnings report, and if it can be a catalyst to break this downtrend resistance, potentially break 143 and push around this 145 to 147 area. After that, I do have levels around 150, and we do have an all-time high of 157. But if we do reject these levels, I'd like to see if we can undercut this low right here of 135.75 and potentially come back down to test this 134 area. And we do have this uptrending support line as well as a support around 130. Now we did bottom out at the beginning of March around 126.28. So I'd be also watching that level as well. All right, the next one that we'll go over is going to be Home Depot. They report Tuesday in pre-markets. Same with Walmart. So for Home Depot, this one has been looking interesting. It is strong, although it did just reject this 20 SMA around this 328.50 resistance. I'd like to see if this could be the catalyst that could actually push us to new highs. Currently, we closed at 324 on Friday, and the highs are of 345.69. So I'd like to see if we could break this 328.50 resistance and potentially push for new all-time highs, depending on this upcoming earnings report, the upcoming guidance, and price target raises, or just the overall initiations that we could see. But if we do get a nice breakdown, then I'd like to see if we could break 320 and then 316, undercut this low right here of 316, potentially fill this gap right here of what is it? It is 308.55 to 308.75. So we do have a small gap there. And then we do have a big volume gap between around 320 all the way down to around 277. But we do have these supports around 300 and 293. Also, we do have this uptrending support line since the flush last year in March. We didn't have a nice bounce right here of March this year. So with that being said, I'd be looking to see if we can actually get either direction, a break of 328.50, or if we can come back down to potentially test some of these levels down here. Now the next one that we'll go over is going to be Futu. This is another growth stock. This one actually was performing quite well until it released the fact that they were going to do a shares offering on April 20th. After that, we have been in a downtrending channel within this falling wedge. So I'd like to see if we can actually, potentially break this 99 support level. If we do break this, then we do have the potential for 91 to 92 to act as a support. But we do have a huge volume gap between 106 all the way down to around 50. So if we do undercut this $99 price point and see an acceleration, then we could see a nice strong flush to the downside. But if we actually do get some continued uptrending price action, I'd like to see a strong break of this downtrending resistance and see if we could break these 131 and 140 levels, and then potentially regain this volume shelf between 142 and 162, where we have a lot of volume being held at. Now the next one that we'll go over is going to be Target. They report Wednesday in pre-market and could see a sympathy play from Walmart's earnings, which reports Tuesday. So as you can see with Target, we do have the potential of an ascending triangle right here. We did just get above this 210.82 area. I'd like to see if we can actually get a continuation and break this high right here. So we do have an all-time high of 217.38. I'd like to see if we can actually break these levels and potentially push to 220 to 225. But if we actually do get some downtrending price action, I'd like to see a strong break of this uptrending support line, potentially test 204 or 202. We do have a strong volume shelf around 206 to 204. So if we give that up, I'd be watching to see if we could potentially come back down to around 196 to 197 or so. But we do have another strong volume shelf around 190 to 193 or so. So I'd be looking to see if that area could hold up if we actually do flush to those levels. Now the next one that we'll go over is going to be TJX. TJX could see a sympathy play from Macy's. They are, pretty much department stores, I believe. But with this one, we do have the potential to fill the remaining of this gap. I don't know if this has already been filled. We have a high of 72.94 and a low of 72.97. So there is still 3 cents remaining on that gap. But overall, I'd just like to see if we could, complete this ascending triangle that we have right here, potentially push for new highs. I'm not sure if these are all-time highs. I would like to zoom out real quick to see. So we are at all-time high levels. I'd like to see if we can actually potentially break this all-time high right here of 74.64 and push to around 75 or maybe 77.50 if we do get a good earnings report and a strong catalyst from that. But if we do come down, I'd like to see if we can actually break 71 and then 70. And then we do have this uptrending support line, and I'd like to see if this 68 level could hold. And we do have a lot of volume being held around here. And also we do have the 50 SMA around the 68 to 68.5 level. Now the next one that we'll go over is going to be KSS, which is Kohl's. They report Wednesday in pre-market as well and could see a sympathy play from Macy's also. So KSS or Kohl's also was seen in ascending triangle. We did break down but bounced off this 55.58 level. We saw a nice strong bounce off of that. A lot of department stores and just overall retail saw strong bounces and plays on Friday. So I'd like to see if we can get a continuation play and potentially break this 63.68 level. I do not believe that these are all-time high levels. Yeah, these are not all-time high levels, but if we can get a nice break of this level right here and this 52-week high of 64.14, then I'd like to see if we could potentially push to 65 or so. But if we actually do, potentially give up these levels right here and these SMAs, then I'd like to see if we can undercut this low of 55.58. The actual precise point is 55.43, and then I'd like to see if we could come down and potentially test 53 or so. After that, I'd be looking to see if the 51.50 area holds up. Now, the next one that we'll go over is going to be L Brands. They report Wednesday and after hours and could see a sympathy play from Kohl's, TJX, and Macy's. So this one's seen an ascending triangle as well. We did have a strong day on Friday also. I'd like to see if we could potentially break this 71.33 area. If we zoom out to the monthly and see these are not all-time high levels, and we do have the potential for a strong resistance around 75.60 or so. But overall, if we zoom back in, I'd like to see if we could potentially break this high right here of 71.33 and potentially push to around 72.50 to 75. If we do get a good earnings report, some upgrades, price target upgrades, initiations and whatnot, that definitely could be a possibility of pushing to those levels. But if we do see some downtrending price action, I'd like to see a strong break of this uptrending support line. I'd like to see if this 64.75 level holds, or if we come down to test this 61.36 level or this 57 level. But with that being said, the next one that we'll go over is going to be Cisco, and they report to Wednesday and after hours also. So with Cisco, I just want to zoom out real quick to see if these are all-time high levels. I do not believe they are. Yeah, during the .com pump, we did see those high levels there, and then we also do have some levels around 2019 or so. But if we zoom in to the daily, I'd like to see overall if we can potentially break this high right here of 54.14 and potentially push to 55 or 56 or so. But if we do actually break down, I'd like to see if these levels hold around here, as we do have some nice volume shelves between 51 all the way up to 52.60. So we do have some supports around 52.82, 52.14, and 51.50 or so, and then another support around 50.37. So I'd like to see if these levels hold up, but if they don't and we get a strong move to the downside, we do have a big volume gap between 51.10 all the way down to around 45.50 or so. So I'd like to see if we do see a flush, seeing as there's not much volume being held between there. Now the next one that we'll go over is Applied Materials. They report Thursday and after hours. We are in a pinch point, and we did just bounce off this uptrending support line. I'd like to see if we could potentially take out 128.50, break this downtrending resistance, and push 132.60, 139, and then we do have this all-time high at 146.49. So I'd like to see if we could potentially take out some of those levels. We are currently below the 50 and 20 SMA. But I'd like to see if we do get a good reaction, if we can take these levels out and potentially see a continuation to the upside. If we do actually reject, I'd like to see if we can take out 121.57. We do have the potential for 114.86 to act as a support, and also this uptrending support line. But if we do start to break those levels, I'd be watching around 110, and then we do have a level around 105 or so. And after that, I'd be looking to see if those levels could hold. The next one that we'll go over is ROST. This is the potential. This play could see a potential sympathy play from Kohl's, L Brands, TJX, and Macy's. They report Thursday and after hours. So this one is seeing a bit of an ascending triangle as well. Also had a nice day on Friday. I'd like to see if we can actually get above this 130 area and potentially push 133. If we zoom out on the monthly, we are at all-time high levels. So I'd like to see if we can actually start to break this 133 area. We do have an all-time high around 134.16. If we start to break these levels, I'd like to see if we could push 135 or potentially push all the way to 140 or so. But if we do reject these levels, and I'd like to see if we could get a strong break of 127, as well as this uptrending support line, and then see if we could come back down to 124. And then we do have a lot of volume being held between 123.50 all the way down to around 118.43. So I'd like to see if these levels could hold, but if not, we do have a bit of a volume gap between 118 to this 114.50 area. So I'd like to see if this 115 area could hold. If not, it does look like we have some potential supports around 110 or so. So I'd be looking to see if those levels could hold up. Now the next one that we'll go over is going to be Facebook. They reported a couple weeks ago, as well as Microsoft, but they could see some sympathy plays from Cisco. If we go over Facebook, this one's looking quite strong. So as you can see, we do have the potential for a descending triangle pattern to be playing out. We are testing this 317 resistance area. I'd like to see if we can break this downtrending resistance and potentially push to around 326 or so, where we have a level of resistance. If we break that level with strength and see a continuation play, we do have an all-time high of 332.66. So I'd like to see if we could potentially take that out and push maybe 335 or 340. But if we do actually reject this level, then I'd be looking to see if 304.50 holds, and then we also have levels around 297.60. But we don't have a whole lot of volume being held up here. So overall, if we do see a strong move to the downside, the next very strong volume shelf is around 280, but that would be a very strong move to the downside. All right, now the last stock that we'll go over is going to be Microsoft. So Microsoft is testing this downtrending resistance. We are in a downtrending channel. I'd like to see if we actually break out or if this downtrending channel remains true. If we break out, I'd like to see a push to 255.50, see if we could regain this as a support, and then potentially take out 261, and then this all-time high of 263.19. After that, I'd like to see if we could push maybe 265 or 270. If we do reject these areas, I'd like to see if we can undercut this low of 238, where we have a nice strong support. After that, I'd be looking to see if we could potentially come back down to some of these levels around 232, and then we do have a strong support around 227.50 or so. But overall, I really just wanted to go over these two because they are setting up quite well, and they have had decent strength in comparison to some other market movers. And overall, if they do break out to the upside, they could give us a good direction for the overall market. But with that being said, there are a lot of solid setups with this upcoming week. A lot of oil and gas plays did see initial pops, but then pulled back. I'd really like to see where the strength is. It did look like on Friday a lot of department stores and retail did have good days. So overall, just scout for your setups, create a game plan, trade that game plan with discipline, execute with discipline, and let's get after this upcoming week.